This is going to be a fun one because teal is a color that a lot of brides want. A lot of customers want this color, but you need to make sure, again, this is one of the colors that you need to make sure you know what they're talking about. Because if they're talking about this and you're thinking this, you're going to have problems. So we're going to do, well, this is called tantalizing teal. For me, that's a little bit light. I like this. So we're going to go for this and maybe this one. Or maybe these, I mean, these are very similar. This one and this one are very similar. So we'll put that one aside. We're going to do these two are going to be what we're aiming for. This is vegan buttercream. It's made with Crisco. It's only shortening. There's no butter in it. So it doesn't have a yellow tint, and we're just going to start straight away with that and not worry about the yellow in it. Now, obviously, the easiest way to get a teal buttercream is to use some kind of a teal food coloring. This is the Americolor Nifty 50 set. And you could just go ahead and get turquoise. See, turquoise is another color that's very similar. This one says teal. This one is teal. This one is turquoise. See how close those are, though. I mean, this is a little bit lighter. It's very similar. But I'm going to use blue and green in case you don't have, you know, other colors. So we'll start with, this is leaf green. That's a basic green. And this one is royal blue. So we'll start with blue and green. And we're going to try to get to these colors. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to add is just a little bit of the blue, because like I said, when you make green, it's blue and yellow. So there's already blue in this. I'm going to start with the blue because that way we're just doing one color. Oops, that might be a lot. Okay, now you might want to use toothpicks for this. I'm actually going to scoop some of this out. I don't want that much color in here to start with. I want to keep this, you know, I want to do this very gradually because I'm just not sure how these colors are going to mix and what proportions we're going to have to use. And just, you know, you can always add more. You don't necessarily, you can't necessarily take the color out once it's mixed in. So if you do think you've added a little bit too much, just scoop that out like I did. And I have rested that toothpick on a little Kleenex, and I can go back and add some more from it if I need to, which I will, because this is going to be really light. Let's take a look. See, the color, this is nowhere near teal, which, you know, I didn't expect because it's blue. But I want to make sure that I get this all mixed in pretty well before I start adding more to it. All right, I'm going to make this a little bit darker. I'm going to add more of the blue there. And then once this is mixed in, we'll start adding some green to it. Just a tiny bit at a time to throw that balance back toward the green. And you could do this with, you might be able, I won't say you could, definitely. You might be able to do this with yellow if you don't have any green food coloring. I think it would be a little more difficult, but it's definitely doable because obviously green has yellow in it. And I do want to take this off and use another toothpick. Let's just start with a little bit because I don't trust this. See how dark that is? Okay, now I can see that is turning it a little bit. It's all over my hand now. I can see that that's turning it a little bit greeny blue, but we're going to need a lot more green. So let's go in. Now, once you put the toothpick into the food coloring, don't put this back into the food coloring. Always use a clean toothpick because you don't want to contaminate the food coloring. The problem is that if you go too far in one direction, it's going to be hard to bring it back unless you add more white icing to it. And one thing that you could do is mix some dark, like I have these little cups here. I was going to mix some dark blue and dark green and then add the icing in to some white icing. Because a lot of times when you can see what the color looks like in the icing, it's easier to judge how much color you need. But I decided just to do it this way. All right, now we're getting to be a little bit too green, I think. So we're going to have to add some more blue. But let me get all this off of the spatula. Sometimes when you clean the spatulas off, you get some extra color and then you don't need to worry. And make sure you're scraping the bottom. See that blue that was in there? You definitely, if you're making colored icing, You want to make sure that you're scraping the bowl and scraping the spatulas, because if there's a little streak of the color that doesn't get mixed in and that shows up on your cake, you're in trouble. All right, now that actually looks pretty good. That is still, it's a little too green. Like I would say that it's closer to this one called Green Jewel, right? That's pretty much exactly the same. It's a little bit too blue, but it needs more blue. So let's put a little bit more blue in there and kind of bring it back in the direction of the blue. But I think we're done with the green at this point. Now I am going to get another toothpick and add a little bit more blue. It's not that far off of this one. It's a lot lighter than this one, but it's not that far off of this one. Let's get to this one first and then we'll try to get it to that. How's that? This was not very much food coloring that I added back in here, because it's very close to the color, and you don't want to go too crazy and take it too far in the other direction, because at this point you're just making it darker. So go, a little bit at a time. Like I said, you can always add more color. You can't take it out. But yeah, we definitely need to get more than that. So I'll just do this. Good. It's still too, well, look at that. That is pretty close. This is still a little bit lighter than this one, but it's a lot closer. It's close to this, but it's darker than this tantalizing teal. But I like this one, and I think that if I was going to put that on a cake, if I was going to put this color on a cake and I was trying to get to this color, I would stop here, because this is going to get darker as it sits. As the color gets into the icing and sits there, the colors do tend to get darker. So you don't want to necessarily mix something and get it to the exact color that you want, because it will get darker and change a little bit, especially if there's red. There's no red in this, but if there's red in your icing, it's going to change color. So if I was going for this color, I would stop, okay? But let's see if we can get it down to this. I'm going to scrape this blue off of the paper towel. Okay, this is a lot of blue. Okay, I'm just going to put all of it in there, and we're going to see what happens. And obviously, if you're making a larger amount of icing, you're going to have to use larger amounts of food coloring. And just like I said, make sure that you are mixing up as much as you need before, like in one batch. Don't think you're going to be able to go back and mix and match if you need to make more. It's better just to have extra icing that is, the color that you need, as opposed to going back and trying to mix more to match it, because it's going to be really hard to do that. You see how we're kind of adjusting? And if you have to go back and do this again, it's never going to be exactly right. Okay, still way too light. I might want to go, okay, I was going to say I might want to go with a darker blue, but I want to stick with this color just in case, just to make the point that we only have two colors to work with. So we're just going to add a whole lot more blue here. This might take a while, so I might just speed this up. All right, now as I'm doing this, this is really getting blue. It's darker because there's more food coloring in it. So I think what we're going to have to do is just add more green and more blue and just make it darker. Because, with the food coloring, the more you have, the darker the color is going to be. And that's basically what's going on here, is that it needs to get to this color. But to do that, you just need to add more of everything just to make it darker. This might work. Now, like I said, if you wanted to start with just a regular teal food coloring, that's going to be the easiest thing. And just add a lot of it if you're trying to get the darker color. But if you're dealing with regular food coloring, you only have the green and you only have the blue. You basically just have to put a lot of color in. Okay, so at this point, we're a lot closer to this. I could just keep going, but I think if I was going to put this on a cake, I would stop. Again, the color is going to get darker as it sits. And if you want to leave it and just let it get darker, and you can, you know, I've tried the microwave method. I don't like it because you have to be really careful and it's very easy to burn the sugar. And you can try that if you want to darken it a little bit. But if you just let it sit, or you just want to stir it, if you just sit here and stir it, it will get darker as it goes because you're basically emulsifying the food coloring into the icing. And as the food coloring spreads throughout the icing in a more even way, it tends to get a little bit darker. I personally would just leave this and let it sit and see what happens. And it's going to get closer to this as it sits. And if it doesn't, you can just go ahead and add more of the food coloring. But what you don't want to do is put so much in there that the icing starts to get grainy and then it gets too dark. So I would leave it here. So basically what we found out is that you start with the blue, add a little green, and then just keep altering it until it gets to the shade that you want. But like I said, the most important thing is to have some kind of a color that you're trying to match. Because if the bride is thinking that this is teal, and you put this on her cake, yeah, it's the same shade, but it's darker, and she's going to pitch a fit because we know that that happens. All right, so leave me any questions. I'll do another color mixing. I'll look for another color. If you want to see me mix a color, if you have a suggestion, go ahead and post it, and I will talk to you all later.